Fog clung to the Appalachian hills like a restless spirit. The trees whispered in the wind, their gnarled branches reaching out as if to grab anyone who dared wander through. Somewhere deep in the woods, a cabin stood abandoned, its timbers groaning under the weight of decades. And yet, some say it was never truly empty. It was here, in these shadowed hollows, that the bell witch first stirred. Locals spoke in hushed tones of a presence that watched from the darkness. At night, faint laughter drifted through the pines. Doors would slam on their own. Animals shied away as if sensing something that no human could explain. The legend begins simply enough: a family living in the Appalachian wilderness, trying to carve out a life from the untamed land. But the land had other plans. The bell witch, malevolent, unseen, and utterly relentless, claimed the Bell family as its first victims. Some say it was revenge. Others whisper it was a curse older than the mountains themselves. Travelers and hunters who ventured too close reported hearing voices that weren't human, whispering secrets in the dark. Candles would flicker and die. Shadows would stretch unnaturally long, and the faint smell of rotting leaves and iron filled the air without explanation. Many dismissed these signs as superstition. Those who did never laughed at it again. And the strangest part? The bell, which was not always seen, but always felt. A chill would creep over the skin, a sudden drop in temperature, the faint brush of a hand when no one was near, and the quiet certainty that someone or something was watching. Some nights, you could hear it whispering your name, soft as the wind, closer than your own heartbeat. It was a presence that thrived on fear. And in the Appalachian wilderness, where darkness draped over valleys like a heavy blanket, fear came easily. The Bell Witch's legend spread through whispered warnings and frightened glances at the woods. No one who had felt it or heard it ever forgot it. And so the stage was set. The hills held secrets, the cabins groaned, and the Bell Witch waited. Waiting for the family who would soon discover that some curses are born from darkness itself. But the first whispers of terror were only the beginning. The Bell family's story was about to descend into a nightmare that would echo through the hollows for generations. The Bell family had settled in a quiet stretch of Appalachian forest, carving their home from the stubborn earth. Life was hard, but simple, until the whispers began. At first, it was nothing more than faint noises in the night. A creak of floorboards when no one was moving. A shadow where sunlight never reached. But soon, the occurrences grew harder to ignore. It started with the animals. Horses would panic in their stables. Dogs would growl at empty corners. Even the family cat seemed to sense an invisible predator, arching its back and hissing at nothing. The locals began to talk, claiming that the land itself had grown restless, possessed by something older than memory. Then the voices came, soft, taunting, and impossibly close. Betsy Bell, the matriarch, would hear them whisper her name when she was alone in the kitchen. John Bell, her husband, felt a cold hand brush against his shoulder on countless nights. They tried to dismiss it, blaming fatigue, the wind, or tricks of the mind, but the evidence grew impossible to ignore. Objects moved on their own. Chairs toppled. Doors slammed without wind. One morning, a large mirror in the hall was shattered, even though no one had touched it. The family began to dread the night, each creak and sigh of the cabin a reminder that something unseen prowled among them. Neighbors, curious and fearful, began to visit. Some brought charms and prayers, hoping to ward off the spirit. Others came to gawk, convinced the bells were exaggerating for attention. But when they entered the home, many left pale and shaken, claiming they felt icy fingers brush their skin or heard whispered threats just behind their ears. Children in the family began to speak of a shadowy figure, describing it in terrifying detail. A woman, half seen, half formed, who laughed cruelly in the dark. She had a presence that was more felt than seen, suffocating and ever-present. Nights became battles of endurance, each family member fighting the creeping dread that something would reach out from the darkness and claim them. The Bells realized this was no ordinary haunting. They were the target of something intelligent, something that fed on fear and anger, something that would not relent. The whispers grew louder, the shadows darker, and the nights longer. It was a slow, relentless torment, a haunting that seemed to have its own cruel will. And then came the first physical attacks. Scratches on skin, bruises that appeared overnight, and the terrifying sense that the entity was drawing closer, studying them, waiting for the right moment. The legend of the bell, which was no longer just a story. It was a nightmare that had taken flesh, and the family was trapped in its grasp. One evening, as the wind howled through the hollows, the bells heard a voice behind them, clear and cruel. "You cannot escape me." The words froze them in place, the darkness closing in around the cabin. And in that moment, the family realized that the bell, which was far from done. The nights grew unbearable. The bell which no longer hid in whispers or shadows. It struck with a cruel intelligence that terrified even the bravest souls. Doors slammed with bone-shattering force. Windows rattled as if an invisible hand shook the house. The family could no longer eat, sleep, or speak without feeling its presence pressing in from every corner. Betsy Bell would wake to find scratches on her arms, deep and jagged, as though invisible claws had ripped her skin. Objects flew across rooms with deadly precision. Once, a heavy cupboard fell over, narrowly missing young Betsy's children. Each incident was a cruel reminder. The witch was watching, always calculating, always hungry for fear. Neighbors tried to intervene. They brought priests, herbalists, and wise women, each armed with prayers and charms. Some claimed to see the spirit, an indistinct figure with cruel, mocking eyes. Others felt icy fingers brush against their skin, heard mocking laughter, and ran screaming into the night. No matter what they tried, the witch's wrath only intensified. The Bell family was trapped in a nightmare that had become physical. John Bell awoke one night to find his blankets pulled off, his body pinned down by an unseen force. The air grew cold enough to see his breath, and the house filled with whispers promising doom. "You will not survive," the voice hissed, and in the shadows it seemed to grin. Every night brought new horrors. The children reported seeing the figure hovering near their beds, its laughter echoing long after it vanished. Walls seemed to bleed with shadow. The family could feel the entity watching from outside the cabin as well, following them through the misty hills, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As days turned into weeks, desperation took hold. The Bells tried to flee, but the curse was inescapable. Even beyond their cabin, the presence clung to them, manifesting as unseen pressure, strange sounds in the forests, and fleeting glimpses of the witch just at the edge of vision. It was a suffocating fear that no prayer, no charm, no neighbor could relieve. The community began to whisper about the Bell, which is more than a ghost. Some claimed she was a demon. Others said she was a cursed spirit of vengeance, tied to the land and bound to torment the family until death itself. And while theories abounded, the Bell family felt only one truth. This was not a spirit that could be reasoned with. It was a predator, and they were its prey. One particularly stormy night, a figure appeared at the edge of the forest. Pale, twisted, with a presence that seemed to devour the darkness itself. Its gaze fixed on the cabin, and the wind carried its voice in a whisper that chilled every bone, soon, very soon. And in that moment, the Bells understood they were running out of time. Word of the Bell, which spread beyond the hollows of the Appalachian forest like wildfire. Travelers passing through spoke of a cabin where shadows moved on their own. Locals whispered about a spirit that could torment without mercy, a curse that did not die with a single family. The mountains seemed to hum with the echo of the witch's laughter. Others claimed to have encountered her too. Hunters returning from the forest reported strange footprints in the mud, footprints that vanished at the edge of the trees. Children playing near abandoned cabins said they heard soft singing in the wind, calling them closer to unseen danger. Even skeptics felt a prickling at the back of their necks when they mentioned the Bell name. The land itself seemed affected. Crops withered overnight. Livestock were found dead under mysterious circumstances. Forest paths twisted in ways that confused travelers, making them feel as though the woods had become alive and the bell which prowled within every shadow. Some say the trees themselves whispered warnings in the wind, bending unnaturally to block the way of intruders. Stories became legends. Parents used the tale to warn children, "Stay away from the cabin, or she will find you." Campfires were filled with tales of shadowed figures and voices that promised doom. And yet, despite the fear, the legend drew curious souls. Some want to test it. Others claim to have seen strange figures disappearing behind trees, watching, always just out of reach. Even decades later, those who lived in the region swore they felt her presence, a cold gust that came from nowhere. Whispers in the night that promise pain and suffering. Windows rattling when no wind blew. Visitors reported hearing their names in the dark, soft yet unmistakable, as though the bell which had remembered them and would not let them go. The story of the bell, which became more than a haunting. It became a warning etched into the mountains themselves. Appalachia, with its fog-laden valleys and dense forests, held secrets that refused to be forgotten. And those who dared to walk its hollows at night might feel it. The faint brush of a hand, a whisper in their ear, the certainty that something watches and waits. Some say she still roams. The curse, like the forest, refuses to die. And the bell which she remembers every trespasser, every whisper of disbelief, every soul daring enough to venture too close. And deep in the shadows, just beyond sight, the faintest laughter drifts through the trees. Even now, the story of the bell which lingers in the Appalachian hills. Travelers passing through the misty hollows sometimes swear they feel eyes upon them, unseen but undeniable. Windows rattle with no wind. Shadows twist in ways that defy explanation. And if you listen closely, just beyond the hum of the forest, you might hear her whisper. Some say the bell, which was bound to the Bell family alone. Others claim her curse spread, a darkness tied to the very land itself. Campsites have been abandoned midnight, children and adults alike fleeing from sounds they cannot describe. Animals refuse to enter certain hollows, and locals never go out after sunset in those cursed areas. The mountains hold their secrets tightly. Every cabin, every hollow, every twisted tree could hide the presence of the bell which, or worse, something else inspired by her malevolence. Those who think the story ended with the bells are mistaken. The terror persists, lurking in the fog, watching, waiting, never resting. And so, the question remains, if you wander into the heart of Appalachia tonight, will you be greeted by the quiet whisper of a legend, or will you meet the curse yourself? Some stories are not meant to be solved. Some legends are meant to endure, to haunt the edges of your mind long after the fire has died and the forest has fallen silent. The bell, which is one such tale, an echo of dread, a shadow in the mountains, a warning whispered through generations. Remember, when you walk the Appalachian woods, the dark is never truly empty, and the bell which may still be watching. If you felt the chill of her presence tonight, there are countless more stories waiting in the hollows of Appalachia. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and step cautiously into the next tale if you dare.